All 200 tons of aid towed by a ship from Cyprus have now been unloaded onto a newly constructed jetty in Gaza. 12 trucks are now involved in its distribution. The charity behind the initiative says more vital food supplies are on the way.
We are loading a new boat ready to deliver more aid. Inside those pallets we have beans, canned meat, we have flour, rice, and of course we have dates. This is happening. We are working non-stop to make this possible. Our first boat arrived there, and we are ready to continue scaling up this. And what we see and we envision is having a highway of aid going to Gaza.
CBC's Dominic Velitis has been tracking the details from our London bureau. Dominic, what can you tell us about this first ship to be unloaded? It's already on its way to return to Cyprus, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. And a little detail from Israel about its delivery. It's saying the Open Arms, as it's called, delivered 130 pallets of humanitarian equipment and 115 tons of food and water last night, which was then offloaded onto 12 trucks owned by the US charity World Central Kitchen for distribution at the numerous sites which it runs in Gaza. So around 240 tons of humanitarian aid were delivered last night in total. It sounds a lot, but no one's under any illusions here, Jacqueline. It's a tiny fraction of what's needed, especially considering those recent warnings from the United Nations and others that famine is now almost inevitable in Gaza unless urgent action is taken. That said, this first delivery by sea is significant. The ship's arrival last night marked the start of a trial to see if deliveries by sea are affected. And if deemed so, then more aid ships will likely follow as part of a wider international effort to get more aid into Gaza. But of course, aid agencies have already warned that getting aid in by sea, and indeed through airdrops, as we've been seeing, is simply not enough to make up for getting supplies in by land. That is by far the preferred way to do things, certainly in terms of the volume of aid that needs to be delivered now. But of course, the situation on the ground, the military operations, the civil breakdown, and indeed the allegations that Israel is restricting aid via its land borders means it's not currently possible. There is a second effort in the works, Jacqueline, to deliver aid by sea. The US is planning to build its own floating dock off the coast of Gaza. A logistics supply ship is already on its way, and once built, the White House hopes to get around 2 million meals a day into Gaza, but that will take some time to build, possibly as long as 3 months. And there are indeed questions about the very feasibility of the plan, which at the end of the day is a huge undertaking.
There's been so much focus, Dominic, on that aid, but there's a lot of attention also on this plan, this approved plan by the office of the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, looking at an operation in Rafah, which there's been a lot of global pushback, really, too, at this point already, Dominic. So what can you tell us more about on that front?
Well, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu greenlighted the operation to invade Rafah last night. Obviously, no details have been given as to when this assault will be launched. That's not surprising. But hundreds of thousands of people, as you know, Jacqueline, are sheltering in that city. And there have been, and there are, widespread concerns that they could get caught up in the fighting. The United States, which is a staunch supporter of Israel, is among the many countries which have voiced very strong opposition to an Israeli ground offensive in the city. Here's what White House National Security spokesperson John Kirby had to say about such a prospect. Take a listen.
We can't support a major offensive in Rafah that doesn't also include a credible, achievable, executable plan to take care for the safety and security of the more than 1 million Gazans that are seeking refuge in Rafah. To move in right now in a major way without a proper accounting for all those people would, as we've said, be a disaster.
Now, Jacqueline, the Israelis say that they do have a plan to protect civilians in Rafah. They have said that they will evacuate them from the city to so-called humanitarian islands elsewhere in the Gaza Strip. But that's something that's already been dismissed by several aid agencies as unworkable, even impossible, due to the sheer numbers of people who are now sheltering there. Meanwhile, with all of this going on in the background, negotiations for a ceasefire continue. The head of Israeli intelligence is expected to lead those talks on behalf of Israel in Qatar tomorrow. And according to the Reuters news agency, these talks are in direct response to a new proposal from Hamas. Now, details are thin on the ground, but we understand a three-stage proposal is on the table that would end the fighting. We'll have to wait and see what happens on that front tomorrow. Jacqueline.
Okay, we'll watch along with you, Dominic. Thanks so much for walking us through the latest on all of that. That's the CBC's Dominic Velitis.